you today about this concept called free execution and the concept of success and failure, how we experience success and failure in our lives, and how we can utilize these principles to bring about our success at will. So I wanted you to understand these fundamental concepts that will hopefully put you in a position by which your execution becomes a lot better in your life. Now, we've mentioned this before, but this concept of you being favored. So you hear people say, hey, I'm favored and highly blessed and things of that nature. There's an actual reality to that, because your life has been preordained to support a specific success. And so the ancestors call this, you're born into this fertile field that is organized and engineered to accept a specific seed to bring about your specific expression of success. Now, how this process works is not necessarily known, but it's 100% foolproof to manifest. So it's kind of like the digestive system. We still don't know how your digestive system takes a potato chip and turn it into blood, but we know all the steps in the process. You see, when a seed is planted into the soil, we know all the steps of the process, but we still don't know how that fertile soil turns that seed into a plant that bears you fruit. So when we're talking about the concept of execution and bringing about your success, your life has been engineered to support your success. There's really not a lot of work that you have to do. Once you plant the seed into the soil, the earth takes care of all of the rest. The fertile field takes care of all of the rest. So you're executing within a fertile field that is there to receive a specific seed. Now, your life and its many situations that you have endured up until this point in your life has brought you to a space by which you should have knowledge of what your good seed is. You should have knowledge of what the seed that you have to plant within this fertile field. In other words, your life should have already explained to you what it needs to gestate and bring into manifestation your life success. It should have already explained to you what you're here to do, what you're here to execute, what you need to execute to bring about your specific version of success. So everything that you have endured up until this point is getting you to that reality. It's getting you to the reality of knowing, okay, I'm here to do this, and therefore I am going to execute this into this fertile field. Based on how your life is going up until this point, you should be in the knowledge of these things. You see, 90% of the people out there, they understand exactly what it is they need to do to bring about their version of success. They're just not able to execute what is known to be correct. They're not able to execute what is known to bring about specific outcomes in their life, because unfortunately they live under the influence of the serpent. So now, we said that we have this 90-10 rule. 90% of your life success is unknown. You don't know how it comes about. Only 10% of your life success is based upon your conscious execution. 90% of your life success is planting that seed in the fertile field, and the fertile field doing what it does magically, bringing people in your life, taking people out of your life, protecting you from negative energies of other people, bringing you into alignment of different things, whatever is necessary to bring your seed to fruition. That's what it's there for. But that's what we call the 90%. 10% of your life success is about your execution. It's about your conscious execution of planting the good seed metaphorically in your life through your execution. This is why Oprah Winfrey, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, they cannot tell you exactly how they became, how they reached their level of success, but they can tell you how they executed. They can communicate to you the 10%, the things that they actually did. But their level of success is based upon their execution and the specific fertile field. Their fertile field was able and organized to bring about that reality of what we see through their success. So they executed their good seed within their fertile soil, and that fertile soil brought to fruition what we see as their success in their lives. But nobody can communicate the 90% because nobody knows how that process works. It's almost magical. So in order for you to understand what we're talking about today, you have to understand that 90%, 10% rule, that 90-10 rule. That your execution is only 10% of your life success. The other part of that is the 90% is the fertile field that you're functioning through. And see, here's what happens in our lives. We don't plant the good seed. One reason is because we're under the influence of the serpent, which we'll talk about later. But the other reason is we're accepting somebody else's good seed. So you watch people on the social media, you watch people on the internet, you watch people on TV manifest their version of success, manifest their version of a good seed, and you attempt to plant it in your fertile field when the reality is your fertile field was not organized and configured to gestate that seed. So in other words, you're not planting the good seed relevant to your life success. So why don't we plant the good seed? Because we just said that your life should have explained to you up until this point what your good seed is. So the question is, we're all in the knowledge of what it is that we're here to do, but we're not able to execute because we're under the influence of the serpent. And therefore, we allow our decisions to be influenced incorrectly, whether it's by peer pressure, whether it's by, looking at other people project their wealth upon us, whether it could be anything. But that influence is limiting us to fulfill our life potential. Your wealth, your fame that you sit back and watch other people enjoy, that is something that you are, that's unique to you. And you have to be happy with what your fertile field produces, because if we try to expand ourselves outside of that, we'll find ourselves in states of failure and not achieving anything. So what we want to do is get better at the 10% and let the 90% do what it does. And whatever we receive, we're comfortable with that. But we're not executing. So therefore, we're not executing the concept of free execution, which is the ability to execute actions and decisions known to bring about a specific outcome relevant to your life success. Free execution is executing actions and decisions known to bring about a specific action known to be relevant to your life success. That's what we mean by free execution. You should be able to execute that even when the serpent influence is there. When something has influenced you away from executing, you should be able to still execute even though the influence away from that is there. And we call that concept discipline or free execution. Your ability to execute even though the influence is there. Your ability to do what you know is correct to bring your success even though the influence is there. Now, why is it that all of a sudden if you're on social media, you see all these quote unquote street dudes being very successful right now? As a matter of fact, you'll find that, in social media now, it's a lot of people on there talking about success that have either been in jail or had some type of criminal background or whatever. And the reason why is because they're very disciplined with their execution. If you can think about this for a second, in their world that they grew up in, allowing your serpent to influence you into an action can actually lead to you either being killed or being jailed for long periods of time. So through that lifestyle, they develop a very keen ability of free execution, discipline over their execution. But most of us who didn't grow up in that particular lifestyle struggle with executing things that we know will bring about our life success. And part of that problem is because A, we're not able to overcome the influence of the serpent, and B, we don't understand how this process works. You know, you have a lot of people out there that may, be doing a lot of work. They overwork themselves, because they feel as though if they work harder, they're going to bring about their success. But more than likely, they're working hard, producing the incorrect seed. And so what ends up happening is they overwork themselves, right? Thinking that that's the way to success. But in reality, you'll find yourself, you're not planting the correct seed in your fertile field, and therefore you're obstructed from success. So free execution, that's what we want you to understand for the Shep C cycle, is about you executing what you know to be correct and necessary to bring about your specific version of success. Everybody knows what they need to execute. They allow the influence of the outside world and even the influence of the serpent within them to influence them away from executing their good seed. Let's go to the Ma'aseh and see what it says about this. So it says here in the book of Noah, chapter Nu, verse 15, it says, in the state of Nu, Nebuchadnezzar is in a complete state of conscious awareness. Now here in the Ma'aseh society, we don't sit back and just tell you to just know this, memorize something. We want you to understand it. We want you to see, based on your reasoning, how this particular concept that we're talking about is not only relevant to you, but it's the truth. And so a lot of times people go, well, you kind of get into too much detail. Well, the issue with that is, we're transitioning into this new age of understanding. And so you have the millennials and even the Generation Z basically saying they're trying to buck all expressions of control. Everything that's been put in place to control people to fulfill a specific outcome, they don't want these things. But see, here's the problem. In order for us to evolve away from these control factors, we have to have understanding. Because if you don't have understanding, you won't be able to manage yourself outside of those control mechanisms. That's important for you to understand. So the way we give you information is based on you increasing your understanding. If you want to progress in your life, you're going to have a level of understanding about how things work, so to speak, so that you can provide your own control within the system, which now eliminates external factors of control. Cells in your body, they don't go to a central authority and ask them how to manifest. Each cell has its own information in it to do its job. And then collectively, if all the cells are doing their job, your body is functioning at its highest potential. But nowhere in there does each cell go around and ask a king cell how to do ABC. That's the concept of understanding. If everybody is able to raise their understanding to a certain degree, there is no need for all of these institutions of control anymore, because we're all vibrating on the same understanding, which means we can produce great success through that process. So that's why we give you these statements of understanding. So anyway, it says here, in the state of Nu, Nebuchadnezzar is in a complete state of consciousness awareness. So now we have to understand what this reality was prior to the creation of all things. In order for you to gain an understanding, we have to know what the reality is prior to that. It says in the state of Nu, Nebuchadnezzar is in a complete state of awareness. It's in a state of being conscious of being conscious. It knows that it exists. It is aware that it exists. That's it. It says there is an absence of conscious of, and thus an absence of influence. So there's an absence of things that it could be conscious of. There are no things that exist at this time, simply itself and the awareness that it exists. There's nothing outside of it that it can be aware of. And therefore, there's an absence of influence. There's nothing at this particular time that can influence it or that can potentially serve as an influence. Let's keep going. It says here, even though Nebuchadnezzar is in a complete state of awareness of itself, it is ignorant of the experience of influence. So even though it's aware of itself as the knowing factor, so to speak, it is inexperienced of influence because there's nothing that exists at this particular time that can exert an influence over it. So therefore, the concept of projecting its awareness through an influence to achieve a specific outcome is obstructed because it is inexperience of influence. It says omniscience is the result of the experience of overcoming the influence of conscious of to arrive at a state of awareness of self. So in order for us to experience omniscience, we have to have influence, and we have to have the ability to overcome influence to fulfill a specific outcome, which brings us into knowledge of self, or omniscience. Prior to the creation of things, Nebuchadnezzar existed as the source, only aware of itself, absent of influence, and therefore absence of the ability to experience itself as the omniscient factor of all things. Now, a fundamental question, you can ask anybody that's religious is, what's the purpose of the serpent? The purpose of the serpent is to give you the experience of influence. And the purpose of self is to allow us to overcome the influence of the serpent to execute what is necessary to bring about a specific outcome. So we can go further and say that your life success is not really about the success itself. It's really not about the material manifestation of what success is for you. It's really not about the money and fame. It's about that 10%. It's about your ability to overcome the influence to execute free execution that actually brings you into the experience of omniscience. What we say here is that omniscience is one of the 4 reasons why the universe was brought into manifestation, so that Nebuchadnezzar could actually experience itself as the omniscient factor, functioning through the vehicles of man and woman as self. And we say self is what? Nebuchadnezzar functioning through the limitations of the mind. So your life is not about money and fame. Your life is about your omniscience, your experience with omniscience, your experience with your ability to overcome your influence, overcome the influence to execute freely outcome, actions, and things that bring about a specific outcome. And we give that decision, that seed, that good seed, right? That seed of self, that seed of knowledge, we give it to the earth, we give it to the fertile soil, and then it does the 90%. And then on the back end, we receive what we were destined to receive, and we find a happiness and experience within my version of money, my version of fame, my version of benevolence that I experienced from that process. So that's the concept, that's the reality. There are things in your life that are put there specifically to exert an influence over you, so that you can overcome that influence to execute your free execution, to execute actions known to bring about a specific success. That's your good seed. You cannot manifest your good seed under the influence of other things. That's important for you to understand. If you are under the influence of the serpent of lust, the serpent of greed, or whatever it is, or somebody else projecting these things on you, somebody else projecting their version of lust on you, and you're being victimized by somebody else's lust, it's still obstructing you from executing your good seed. So even being the victim puts you in a position of not executing your good seed, which puts you in a dire process or obstruction from achieving what your fertile soil is here to provide for you. You cannot exist within your life completely under the duress of your serpent, of the serpent of other people around you. You're here to experience free will. You're here to experience your free execution, which brings you into knowledge of self. And at the same time, it allows you to plant the good seed in your fertile soil to experience your version of money, fame, and power. You have been blessed with a fertile field that you're not taking advantage of by overcoming the influence of the serpent to plant your seed. So for this cycle, let's get better at our execution. Let's get better at eliminating the influences in our lives so that we can be better versions of ourselves and become more prosperous and successful in the long run. Let's meditate.